Hi everybody, welcome to Sunday Sessions with Courtenay Pollock. Hey Courtney.
Hello, Heidi.
Thank you so much for joining with us today. We are going to kick off by talking about this beautiful piece that's behind us. I absolutely love it, Courtney. Is this something new?
Yes, it's new. I wanted to do something very different, and it's essentially folded almost like the reverse of what you do in classic mandala, where you divide off the sections, like you're making a paper airplane, and you just go, half, quarters, eighths, sixteenths, and then you've got this long strip, and you divide it off into sections, and essentially those are the bands of color, and in them, I put the scarabs and stuff like that, and it's a lot more complicated. This one, I folded it into a quarter, and then I folded the edges a little bit to make some, and then I folded the center in towards itself, and so at the end of it, your center is like under 16 layers of cloth, and so that center was at the center of many layers of cloth, and you can see in those rings,
It's almost like a giant scarab in a way.
It kind of is, yes.
How it's there, it's like kind of just widen out scarab.
Right. And I call it vanishing point for obvious reasons, I guess. And so anyway, it was just a,
It was a custom piece, right?
It's a custom piece.
Awesome.
I've done that design on the speakerfront cloth, which is very thin, so you can get a lot more information into a small area with this thin cloth, because it'll fold so tightly. You can put so much geometry into a small area, and it's a successful design on that kind of cloth. Then you get into heavier cloth, and it's much more cumbersome. That piece, which is the size of a big mandala, you're dealing with a mass of cloth like this, with that center somewhere in the middle of that mass, and you've got to dye it, fill it up, and figure time where when it's got penetration. And I got it about right, because it's penetrated right to the very center, and it's still got a little bit of white, and the colors are still coherent. They haven't all merged together. So overall, I guess I'm happy with it.
Well, you are a perfectionist, so I can see where you get a little.
It helps in what I do to be a perfectionist.
Well, I love it. I think it's great, and I know you do custom work through your website as well.
Occasionally.
Yeah. How can people get a hold of you for stuff like that?
CourtenayTieDye.com is my my site, and on the site I think there's my email address. Through the email, I respond to emails, and my phone number's somewhere too. So I prefer not to do Messenger. I don't like Messenger one little bit. I just ignore it, and it's like it's a public forum. That's it.
Yeah.
And so email or phone, and I'm happy to talk about custom work, as long as it's not big heavy cloth or something that I can't really work with.
Totally. I know it's a special medium that you work with, so.
It's a rarefied field.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us, and I guess we're going to take off now on your next venture.
All right.
Enjoy, guys.
Thank you, Heidi. Huh. Yeah, it's a different kind of background. Yeah, the vanishing point is right behind my nose. Now I'm staying at my mother's, and Tony is just a wonderful person and host, and takes care of everything. I try to say, oh, I'll do the washing up. You did all that. No, you stay there and you entertain your mother. and I said, so is this, she said, don't worry about it. He's happy in the kitchen. He'd rather be in the kitchen than having to be, out here and being social. I was like, oh, how does that work for you? She said, it's great. I watch my shows. He takes care of everything. I was like, seriously? She said, he's a wonderful man. She said, I've never been happier, but he's pretty retiring, or not retiring so much as not quite shy either, but he's not, an outgoing social kind of person. So he's happy, that, that you're back and I'm okay, everything, So anyway, now my sister lived in a about a half an hour away, maybe a little less by car, another beautiful little village, and used to be basically farmland, and then it became all orchards, apple orchards. And her and Philip, her husband, who was a school chum of mine, I said in an earlier episode how I introduced him to my sister. Forgive me for that. But anyway, he turned out to be a really good guy. And he was a steady worker, and he did well in his profession, and they ended up with owning their home and having a good retirement. So, better than I've done. Anyway, and they raised 3 girls, all of whom are just wonderful girls, and they've had their own children, and they had their own children. Now it's like this big family. And my sister is in the bosom of the family. She's like, absolutely the heart of the family. She never drove a car. She didn't want to drive. She was a grammar school student who won a scholarship to Sadler's Wells Ballet School. But we, at the time, couldn't afford for her to go there, which is, sad for Jenny. But she got involved with Philip, and then she got pregnant, and, so that's the way that went. But so I we drive over to visit Jenny, and her husband Philip they were trying to put him into management, and he wasn't good at it, and he was under a lot of stress, and he started having like seizures, like an epileptic fit. His last one, he had just parked his car down in Maidstone, which is a big town. Excuse me. And he crossed over the road, and he had a grand mal seizure right in the corner, man. They took him off to hospital, and so until his condition improved and it was certified by the doctor, he couldn't drive anymore. He just got this brand new little car, and so I get to have the car. Perfect timing. Sorry about your luck, Phil. Anyway, so I'd go each morning and pick up my sister. She loved to go on a country ramble in the car. Since she didn't drive, she never had the luxury of just driving, free and exploring and stuff. And Philip was always busy, or he'd rather be with his mates, or so, didn't want to be driving his wife around, just sightseeing. And now Jenny walked everywhere, and as I said earlier, and way earlier, in England, typically, the villages and all the little settlements they all cropped up on the next farm or the next diocese or something like that. But typically they're as far away as you could walk and back there and back in one day, which would be maybe up to 20 miles. But more typically it's like, there and back in 12 miles. So it's the next village is 6 or 7 miles away. And every village had its own accent because they were cut off from the rest of the world. They all developed their own accents. And when I was growing up, there were like 10,000 different accents in England. Every little place you pulled into, they had a different brogue going on. And I told you the story. I was driving down to visit with my brother in Bristol, on the West Country, when he went to university there. And so I got outside of London into Oxfordshire, and I'm going to go down the M4, I guess. And pulled in to gas up in my Jaguar, and I pull in, and this young guy comes up. He says, "Oh, nice car. Hey, where are you going?" I said, "Well, I'm going to Bristol to visit my brother, university down there." He said, "Oh, where are you from?" I said, "Well, I'm just down from, up from Rochester, Medway Towns." And he said, "Oh, where be that?" I said, "Well, it's not very far away. It's just, the other side of London." He said, "Oh, what would it be like there?" I said, "Well, it's much like here, really. They just speak differently." He said, "Well, they all speak like you." I said, No, they don't speak like me at all. They think I'm a foreigner there. I speak more like an Oxford person. Aren't we in Oxford? How come you're not speaking like I am? He says, oh, I don't know. Only the toffs speak like you and drive a car like that. Whoa, what it'd be like to be you, huh? I was like, sorry about your luck. I was like, seriously? This is what you'd encounter, anywhere I would pull over, there'd be a different accent and a different, level of ignorance about the world and stuff like that. And so I'd pick up Jenny up, and we'd go. I'd say, okay, let's pick a destination. Let's say Sittingbourne, and I know that it's like that direction from here. So I'll kind of head that direction. She said, "Don't you want to see a map?" And I said, "No, Jenny, I don't want a map. I'm just going to head in that direction, and we'll come to it." And so I would go cross country. I'd take the tiniest roads and farm tracks, whatever. And we discover village after village that were essentially all within walking distance of where she had lived for 20 years. And she'd never even heard of them.
Oh, wow.
It's like a whole new world. And these little villages, what would qualify for a village would be a church, a pub, and a post office. And typically it's, there's farmland all around, and most of them developed out of, a central farm. But some of them they would have, beautiful old architecture and buildings that were still functional, like exclusive private schools and things you would never have heard of. I ran into Prince Andrew, back then, visiting this. We were in this village, and I'd gone to the local pub, and there was this big, beautiful, grand building. I said, "What's?" And I parked next to this Royal Blue helicopter. And, I was like, wow, this is an expensive vehicle. And I get to the pub, and I said, I parked, I hope I'm not in anybody's way. I parked next to this blue helicopter. He said, "Oh, yes, that's Prince Andrew's." I said, "Oh, yeah, that's right. He flies himself, doesn't he?" He said, "Well, him and his henchmen." His, henchmen. They're like, Secret Service, I guess. They have protective details that are all special forces guys. Oh man, these guys. So I'm visiting this pub, and they're in the school that you can see from the pub, this beautiful grand old building, and it's a private school, really upscale. And he's, visiting on the celebration of their 100th anniversary or something like that, And at some point, they're hoping that he's going to come into the pub. I said, I doubt that they're going to come into the pub. But, it would be great if they did. And there was a side door, and I've got pretty good timing. So I went, excuse me, Jenny, a minute. I'm just going to go check out the side door here. And I went out the side door, and I walked right into the middle of the entourage of Prince Andrew and his cohorts. And they all go, on a chain, you're like, whoa. And I said, excuse me, guys, sorry, didn't mean to scare you. I said, "Are you coming in for a drink? Come on, come in and, meet the locals. You'll love it." He said, I would really love that. But, I've got a schedule to keep. But, pleased to meet you. Carry on. And I go back in, and Jenny said, "What was all that about?" And I said, "Oh, I was just having a little tete-a-tete with Prince Andrew." She said, "Oh, well, why don't you bring him in for a drink? I said, well, Jenny, I did invite him, but, he has a schedule. And she says, oh, I hope they don't hurt Philip's car when they take off in that big helicopter. I said, Jenny, why are you speaking so weird? She said, what do you mean? I said, you're speaking like a costermonger. I'm sorry, that was derogatory. That stuff that Dad used to call people like a gutter snipe and stuff, with this terrible accent. She said, well, that's how everybody speaks round here. And I said, well, yes, they did. They always did, even when I was at school here, but I chose to maintain my accent. And she says, well, I chose not to, so there. I was like, okay, Jenny, no offense.
Oh dear.
And that's the way the accents go. And I did mention earlier that, I as a little boy, I would go to town. I remember my first sojourn into town, and I was trying to find this place. I was on an errand for my mother or something, to get something. And I asked this old fella that was on the street, he's got the little flat handicap, and he's shuffling along. I said, excuse me, sir, could you direct me to, the Bennett Estate or something like this? Okay, Governor, yes, sure. He's all bowing and scraping and tipping his hat and, doing all this stuff. And I was like, what's the matter with this guy? And he says, are you okay, young sir? Where's your people? I said, quite all right, I'm just on an errand, I just need to get directions to. He said, as long as you're quite all right, sir, and then, gives me, and I said, God, I got back home and I said, when my father came, I said, Daddy, why was this guy bowing and scraping before me, when I asked him directions? He said, oh, don't worry about it, Courtney, it's just, the peasants, they're just, your accent makes them subservient. And I said, well, why would that be? That's kind of extraordinary, and it made me most uncomfortable. And he said, no, just don't worry about it. They're happy to have somebody overseeing them. They don't want to have responsibility for themselves. They like to have somebody that's in charge, and you're the kind of person that's in charge. Never forget that. I was like, okay, Daddy. Okay. I was like, fuck off. I was never rude to my daddy. Honestly, he was a grand old English gentleman, but boy, was he fixed in his thing. But as the years went by, I noticed he softened and he started to hang out with natives and actually get down, talk to just everybody and anybody. And of course, then he was accepted, and which was interesting to see. He didn't get humbled or anything like that. He just started to understand that his accent didn't give him a higher station in life. It was just, it was a perception, because of the way people were indoctrinated, in those early days. And of course, that's radically changed now, but it was still changing when I was a boy. Downton Abbey is a perfect thing. Of course, now I wasn't born back then. That was, my dad's generation. But that's the way things evolve slowly. So anyway, we're going to roving through the British countryside, and it's like when you get away from the trunk roads, the main roads and the motorways and all that stuff, there's still the same charming old England that I was hoping to discover when I got back, and I did, and it's beautiful. And I would choose another destination. Let's go to Sittingbourne, and that's that way. And we would have all these adventures on this route, off-road basically, through to Sittingbourne, and that would be our turnaround. Then we, discover a different route back. And it was quite the adventure, as I was approaching it as a complete tourist, but knowing that the objective is to stay completely off all the main roads, because it's chock-a-block with traffic and all these little country lanes and farm tracks and stuff. There's nobody on them. There's all these charming little villages and old pubs along the way, and some beautiful architecture. And of course there'd be great hedgerows and walled manors, and of beautiful homes that are hidden away behind these hedges and walls of people that are still living the good life, that we can't even imagine. Was well, actually, I kind of imagine later on. I had a nice place with horses and all that stuff. Nothing like great manor houses with servants and all this, but even so, it was that refresher course, going back to England and realizing that the old sod, as it's called, England is still thriving, behind the facade, not even a facade, the turmoil of overcrowding and, terrible traffic jams and all this enterprise going on. But in the quiet country areas, there's still people living a cultured, sedate life, with their wealthy friends and all that stuff. I don't begrudge them anything. I've seen the world in so many different aspects. Really raw and joyful and beautiful and all kinds of stuff. So anyway, roaming the British countryside with Jenny, and it was such a treat for her since she never drove, never had the freedom of driving, and it was an eye-opener. And of course, it added to her geography, and then we go for long walks too, and go find one of these villages that we'd come across driving, and have a lunch somewhere, maybe have a gin and tonic. And Jenny doesn't really drink, but she'd love the occasional gin and tonic. It would just like, ooh. Huh. Anyway, so I'm my friend John Morse, I mentioned a few times. He had promised, when I get out, we'll go on a vacation somewhere, and just forget about that whole chapter of he was very straight would be a good word to describe him. He was from a good family. Their family owned the Morse Road construction in the northwest of the United States, big enterprise, and he had a whole section of that he had 1,200 men working under him or something, and he actually brokered a deal to sell the company while it was at its peak, and his dad and the other brother or cousin or whatever that had been running it for 50 years were done. Their vitality, came from just being in that position of ownership, but the time had come to sell, and so John had brokered a great deal, of 70, 80,000 or something for this business, and but he was never a hippie or he'd never smoked pot, he'd never done anything, but a lovely man. We used to go on our horse vacations with him and his wife Susan and their kids, and it was delightful, and so I spoke to John. I got a cell phone and I thought nothing of it. I dialed him in the United States, and that phone call that lasted maybe 12 minutes probably cost me about £500. Like, what?
Oh my goodness.
I'd been away from it for 5 years. I had no idea how the world was working. When I was in hospital for 3, 4, 6 months basically, and cut off from the world, and when I got back into the world again, things had moved so fast. Well, this is 5 years, and things had changed so radically, and it's like a lot of catching up to do. Anyway, I spoke to John. He said, well, I know we were going to maybe go dive off the Great Barrier Reef in Australia or do some exotic thing, but my son has come up with type 2 diabetes, and I've found this place in Brazil, called João de Dias, or John of God, and it's. I said, "Is it a spiritual retreat?" He said, "No, it's not. But this guy channels entities that heal people." I said, "Oh, interesting. Can you see the entities?" He said, "I don't know anything about the details." He said, "I doubt it. It's really." I said, "So it could just be a big scam." He said, "Well, even if it's a scam, it's really working. Their percentage of healing is like really high. It's like for the natives, it's like 93%. For people from other parts in the world, it's still up over 70 odd percent." And I said, "Well, it sounds interesting. Yeah, I'll be happy to join you there." And that's what I did. I got a ticket to Brasilia, is the capital of Brazil, and the compound that we were going to was about 100 kilometers north of that, toward the equator, because now we're quite a ways below the equator, so we're in the southern hemisphere. And along the way, my plane is I'm supposed to make a connection in Sao Paulo to Brasilia, and then I would get a cab to the restaurant where we're meeting at, and then we'd take the coach to the compound where we're going to be living. Well, we land, after this long journey, and then we're coming into Rio de Janeiro, and there's all these volcanic cones all around, and they're giant things. And this plane is coming down to this valley with all these, and there's the big Jesus standing up there on the top of this hill, like giant as you please, and the plane is coming in, and he's literally, the wingtip is almost hand to hand with the big Jesus. Oh, wow. And he's wheeling around and then coming down to get into, and it was like, and this is a big plane. He was like doing stuff that you'd expect in a little plane. Just an amazing feat of flying, and I was like, is that big Jesus winking at us? Anyway, it was quite dramatic, to land there. So we land in Rio de Janeiro, and everybody gets off, and I go, "Oh, okay." I get off, and I got my ticket, and I go, "Yes, so I have a connecting flight," and they look at it, said, "Oh, for Brasilia." I said, no, it's from Sao Paulo to Brasilia. I said, "Well, where's Sao Paulo?" I said, "Well," they said, "Well, it's the next stop. You just left your plane, it's already gone." And I said, but nobody tells me that there's a connection. It says Sao Paulo. And I assumed that's where we were. So I'm like, I'm done. I don't know where this place is. I don't speak they're speaking Portuguese. So anyway, I hustle and to a ticket counter, and I said, "Well, this is what happened." And they go, "Well, actually, there's a plane going to Sao Paulo. It's leaving any minute." And I said, "Can I get it?" And they said, "If you can get there in 3 minutes, you can get it." I said, "Can you call ahead?" And they said, "We will. There's no guarantee they'll hold the plane." And I've got these great big bags, and I'm hustling, and it's like a mile away through a big empty airport. And I get there, and I said, "The plane to Sao Paulo." I said, "They're just closing the doors." They said, "I'm here." And they go, "Okay." And I get on, and it's a different plane. It's not the one that I was ticketed to, but it was going there. And I get off in Sao Paulo, and then I still made the connection to my Brasilia flight, and landed in Brasilia, and got a cab to the restaurant where everybody's already enjoying a dinner, and I met all the people that was on that. It's a group that they would do groups that would come to this, and there's a couple of attractive young ladies and my friends, and it was a nice group of people, and so I'm comfortably ensconced in this wonderful group of people, and we're headed to this new adventure in this little town outside of Brasilia, about 100 kilometers north. That's the João de Deus compound, and we're going to all have a big healing, whatever that means. And now we're at 30 minutes.
Oh, wow. All right. Awesome. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm excited to hear what the next story is going to be all about. So thanks for joining us
A little
today.
more exotic than the English countryside, I think.
Yeah, totally. Thanks, Courtney.
Thank you, Heidi.
All right. And thanks, guys. We'll see you soon. Bye.